Here's Milo. He's in the back of my video today. And I got Miss Magic giving me support today too. Let's get this video started. Hey everyone, so my name is Amanda if you're new here, and I am autistic. I have ADHD. I have a memory disorder called SDAM. That stands for Severely Deficient Autobiographical Memory. And I have total multisensory aphantasia, which means I don't experience any of the senses in my mind. So I have been wanting to do a video about SDAM again because I haven't done one in a while. And while I know it's in a minority of my followers, I do know that I do have a lot of followers who also have SDAM. And I'm really curious how closely tied SDAM is to other neurodivergencies. When we're talking about autism, a lot of times we're talking about a spectrum of traits. I mean, that's what the spectrum of autism is. It's not that you're a little bit less autistic and a little bit more autistic. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about the spectrum. What we're talking about is how people present in a trait. So for instance, SDAM, I have very lack of memory, but there's a lot of people on the autism spectrum have hyper memory. So that's kind of where we're talking about the spectrum, like in senses. Like some autistic people cannot stand to be hugged or touched because they're so touch sensitive, while me, I really love deep pressure and tight hugs. And but I'm really sensitive in other areas. Like I put on eye makeup and my eyes are watering and tearing because I'm so sensitive to having makeup on. But I sometimes enjoy makeup, so I'll put up with it, but it is a sensory frustration for me. Anyway, so today I wanted to do a video on SDAM. So for anybody who doesn't know what SDAM is, like I said, it's severely deficient autobiographical memory. And your autobiographical memory is also known as your episodic memory. It's like the juicy details of your memory. It is like when most people think back to a memory of themselves when they were a kid, or even something they did last month. When they talk about that memory, they're talking usually about their episodic memory. They are talking about the things that they remember doing, for one thing, but this maybe what people were talking about, maybe some of the sensory experience of that memory, just basically all the details. So what I have, because I'm lacking episodic memory, I do have semantic memory. That's knowledge. So when somebody says, what is the capital of France? And you say Paris, that's knowledge that you have. You've memorized that fact. I have knowledge about my life. So I might remember that I did something a month ago or in my childhood, but I won't remember any of the details about it. I just remember that it happened. I also have really strong muscle memory, and I have what is called emotional memory. So that I found out is really tied to CPTSD, which pretty much most late diagnosed autistic and ADHD people have CPTSD because being undiagnosed causes trauma. And a lot of people who have CPTSD from autism and ADHD, they will have like these flashbacks of their childhood, of a time that they were being gaslit, or a bad memory around a sensory experience from when they were autistic. Because I don't have autobiographical memory, my like flashback sort of my CPTSD is coming in the form of like emotional memory. So something that happens in the present will trigger an emotional experience from something that happened in the past, even though I don't necessarily remember any of the details of that thing that happened. It's really confusing. And something I've been working through in therapy. So today, one thing that I like to do about my vlog is kind of give concrete examples, because when people talk about like all the things I've been talking about in very abstract ways, it's really hard for me to relate specifically, but when someone gives a concrete example from their own life, then even if I don't relate to that exact scenario, I can see myself maybe in similar scenarios. So when I was when I wanted to do a video on SDAM, my first thought is like, it's really hard to talk about the things you don't remember. Like, honestly, like, oh yeah, I don't remember that. There's the video. But honestly, it does affect me in my day-to-day life. When you don't remember your past, it really affects your day-to-day life. And my brain is going on a tangent because I was going to talk about one thing, but all of a sudden another thing just popped in my head. I don't know. If I have time, I'll put that one at the end as a shorter. But so my kids are 16. I have twins, and they are also autistic ADHD, and one has OCD. But they are ready to sign up for driver's ed. And some autistic people, I want to put this in here, some autistic people never get to a point where they feel like they are capable or comfortable driving. I'm really hoping that that won't be the case for my kids. I'm very certain that they are both capable of driving. Neither one of them are very excited about driving, but there's a lot of anxiety and stress because it is such a big, responsible thing. But I think that they are going to be fully capable of driving. I was capable of doing driver's ed when I was 16. But for some autistic people, they don't get their driver's license until much later in life, or sometimes never, and that's okay too. So while they're signing up for driver's ed, and I wanted to be able to share and relate my driver's ed experience. The problem is, this is another time in my life where when I'm talking to my kids, I cannot relate to them my experience because I don't remember it. And it's really frustrating and sad. And I want to be able to kind of like share it with them, but I have such little memory of, my life in general. That's an important thing to note. There's a lot of reasons that you might have memory issues. SDAM is an ongoing, lifelong memory disorder. So it's not that I just have missing years of my childhood. I also don't remember things that happened last month, even last week. It's ongoing. So it's not a trauma-based memory disorder. It's still being researched, but as far as researchers currently know, it's something that it's just how your brain is wired from birth. So you can also have trauma and SDAM. Like I have CPTSD, but it's separate from having SDAM. So when I was talking to my kids and I was trying to dredge up these memories, again, I do have semantic memory and I have muscle memory. And when I was trying to remember, because the class that they are signing up for, it's in the summer and it's 3 days a week for 4 weeks. And they are frustrated that it's stretched out over a month. They would rather have it just be like every day until it's done. And I was like, yeah, I think that's how mine was. And I have to rely on logic a lot of times when I'm trying to build a memory because I don't remember it. But I can sometimes use my semantic facts to build what probably happened. So one of the things is I know I took driver's ed with my cousin who lives in another town. She lives about an hour and a half away, and she's 6 months younger than me. So in Texas, you can get your driver's permit and take your class at age 15. So I must have been 15 and a half because if my cousin took it with me, then we would have to wait till she was 15. So I must have been at least 15 and a half before I took driver's ed. And then I was thinking it had to be a 2-week class where we went every single day because my cousin, she had a lot of anxiety too growing up. And I don't think she would have been comfortable being away from home for more than 2 weeks. If I remember, and again, this is a lot of, I use that word, but it's more just like logicking things together. It probably took a lot of convincing on my part for me to get my cousin to come and stay at my house for 2 weeks to do driver's ed with me. And we wanted to do it in, I grew up in Houston. We wanted to do driver's ed together, and we wanted to do it in Houston because, one, it was a really, really good driving school. And two, if you can learn to drive in Houston, I mean, you're pretty much good to drive in most cities in the US. Like, Houston is not an easy city to drive in. So my mom really wanted, because I lived in Houston, she wanted me to be comfortable in taking driver's ed in Houston. So my cousin did come to stay with us, and that's what I'm saying, I'm pretty sure. And then as far as the muscle memory, so my driver's ed class, the instructors had this like really unique way that they taught driver's ed, and they relied a lot on muscle memory, and they drilled things into us. There was the 10 and 2, which now I think is changed in the position. Like, I don't think you're supposed to do 10 and 2 anymore. I think it's lower. But when I was learning to drive, you had to hold the steering wheel at 10 and 2. And as you were driving, if you were going down a street and there was a cross street and someone pulled up in a car or a pedestrian or something like that, there was words that we had to say out loud while we were driving to our instructor. So if we saw someone out of the corner of our eye coming like perpendicular to us, we had to say sniper. And they came up with these like fun words for us to say to try to like, one, it communicated a lot in one word, and they were words that we would remember. So sniper. And then when we were driving on the freeway, one of their rules was that you never wanted to be at the front of like a group of cars. And whenever there was a group of cars on the freeway, they called it a wolf pack. So we'd be doing our freeway driving, and they kept us at the back of the wolf pack. And then there was checks. Whenever we looked up in the mirror, we just had to say mirror, mirror. So as we were driving, because they wanted us to continually look up in our rearview mirror to check around us. So there was all these like things that they did that I still do to this day. I don't say sniper when I see, but sometimes in my head, like quietly, I will think to myself sniper. And it was just a built-in muscle memory from my driver's ed class. And that's just one of the ways that my muscle memory shows up in my life, from things that decades old will still reoccur for me. But the actual class, the driving instruction, driving with the teacher, I don't remember any of it, like zero. I have zero memories of my actual class other than these muscle memory things that they had us do. And then semantically, I just remember that my cousin was with me. So I was sharing some of this with my kids, but it would have been, I feel like it would be nice if I could, tell them a little bit more about the experience or what it was like when I was first learning to drive. Because even just telling stories about how I might have felt when I was first learning to drive, I can't share that because I don't remember it. So that's one of the ways that having a lack of memory kind of affects my current life, is when you are with people and you want to reminisce about something in the past. I don't have it. So the thing that I thought about earlier and how it affects me, again, having lack of memory in current day, is the last time I was at my doctor's. Well, this is like two things, both medically related. So actually, the last time I was at my dentist, I started at a new dentist, and she asked me when was the last time I got x-rays. And I'm like looking at her, I'm like, I don't know, like probably last year, maybe. And I'm like, is that something that people remember, is when they last got their teeth x-rayed? And some things like that, I don't even know if that's just common knowledge. Like, do people remember that kind of thing? Or is that something that most people just wouldn't necessarily remember? I don't know. But I said to her, I'm like, look, I had my chart sent over from my previous dentist. You're going to have to look. Like, I don't remember if it's important. Because, yeah, that's not something that I'm going to remember. Now, then also what happened with that dentist, because what I was doing was getting a night guard, and my insurance denied my night guard. That was really frustrating because I paid for half. They told me that the insurance was going to cover the other half. And then we got the mold made. And when I went in to go pick it up, they said insurance denied it because of frequency. Basically saying that I had a night guard too soon. Like they only give it out ever so many years, which we are following up with the insurance company because it has been, actually on this insurance, I've never gotten a night guard. But again, what I had to do, because I couldn't remember how long ago it had been since I'd gotten my last one, which was a temporary one. It was only supposed to last me up to 6 months, I think. And I actually ended up wearing it for several years. Part of that was because of COVID, but, and I literally wore a hole in the night guard because it was made out of a flimsier material. It was only supposed to be temporary. Well, I had no memory of when I got that thing done. So everybody in the comments will be like, keep a journal, put it in your calendar. I've tried all of these methods and they work and they don't work. So behind me on my bookshelf, I have 6 bullet journals. Problem is when you can't just search it digitally, night guard, and I have no memory, I'd have to go through every single one to try to find if I wrote it down. I try to write down medical stuff like that, but would have written down night guard, I don't even know. Because at that time, would I have thought it was important to remember when I got a night guard? Probably not, in that moment. And so I tried to use my Google Calendar. I did finally find that what year I had previously gotten a night guard, but we paid out of pocket for that one because it was a temporary one. So we got to figure that out with the insurance. But I can't rely on my memory, and trying to use the tools that I've tried to use to help me remember things only works sometimes because either it's something that I just don't think is a big deal to write down, or at first I was searching TMJ and at first I was searching night guard, could not find it. And then I'm like, well, maybe I put it down as a TMJ. And then I found it in my Google Calendar that I had written down as TMJ splint instead of night guard. So even trying to remember the language that I might have used, makes it difficult. So people always will tell me oh, you need to write these things down. But when your memory, it doesn't work so much that you can't even remember how to reference it, it's a real problem, people. But yeah, and then also at the doctor this last week or so, we were talking about my medical history and trying to get a timeline. And I tried to write these things down, but trying to go over it with her was so frustrating because I was trying to remember when she had prescribed me a certain medication and how it made me feel. And it's just and I wasn't expecting that for the appointment. We kind of went that way. So I didn't even bring in notes to prepare for that because I didn't know that we were going to talk about it. So then I'm just trying to rely on my memory, which again, I can't do. So yeah, having a memory disorder, especially one that is still being researched. So I am medically diagnosed autistic and ADHD, but aphantasia and SDAM are still being researched. They're not actually diagnosed medically yet. So I've mentioned it to my doctor, but it's not in her notes because it's not an official diagnosis. And so trying to remind her every time, I've got a memory issue for real. Anyway, so I hope that kind of relates for anybody who has SDAM and they can kind of understand what I'm talking about. And if you don't have SDAM, kind of relate to how difficult it is to move through life when you don't have autobiographical memories. One of the examples that I like to give is that I have like the index, the semantic knowledge, but I don't have the chapters. I don't have all the juicy, good memories of my life. And one last side little note, I want to say thank you to Miguel for checking up on me, because I don't have a posting schedule because I have pathological demand avoidance profile of autism. And if I was to ever put a posting schedule for my videos, then it would make me like quit, because that's what PDA does. It feels like a demand, and then my brain just will shut down. But typically I put a video out every 3, 4, sometimes 5 days. And this time it's been a little bit longer. This last week was very hard for me. I had a lot of bad days. I'm switching ADHD medicines, and I was on Strattera, and we decided it didn't work. So I had to come down off of it, and I had so many days of headaches, so many bad headaches. So this whole last week was just surviving to do the things that I had to get done to make my life function. And thankfully, I think the Strattera is now out of my system. It did not help me. And we are now approaching it from a new route. So I'm not currently on an ADHD medicine right now. She put me on just an anxiety medicine, and we're going to try to get my anxiety lowered. And then we're going to reapproach the ADHD newly. So I'm just keeping y'all updated because I like to be transparent and tell you what works for me. But every single autistic ADHD individual is different and unique. Medications aren't for everybody. I don't know if ultimately I will be on meds, but I figure it's worth a try to see if that tool will help my life. Until the next video, bye, and thank you guys so much for watching and your support.